Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the Team DSM men's preview for 2022. There'll be a women's preview as well. Kind of a chalk and cheese between those two teams in terms of success this year. As usual, we will have recap of their 2021 season, which has been done all over the place, particularly on the Wielerflits website. They've had some good reporting over the entire season by Nico Dick, particularly. And then we have transfers, picking their teams for races, and what our hot takes are for them in 2022. And just as a reminder, DSM were the worst team in World Tour this year by points. Now, points aren't everything, of course, but they won in terms of victories. They did get 5 World Tour wins, which is quite a lot, but broadly were not that competitive throughout the season. And they had Case Bowl win in Paris Stage 2, then a 4-month gap between their next win of any level, which was Tourdelin GC in Stage 3 by Stora, before rattling off a Polonia win with Arndt and 3 Vuelta wins from the break with Stora and Bardet. But Benji, I don't know what happened. Well, still one win for the first 6 months when there's a lot of the racing. It's just a completely different team from last year in terms of performance, when last year they were, I think, top 5 and, he or she, and it was so much better last year with more Grand Tour wins.
Yes, certainly. I feel like last year we had that intense fight with Hirschi in the Tour de France. Then he did great at the likes of Flèche Wallonne and so forth. So that was so different from this year. I think I recall one of the previous years of Sunweb when Dumoulin was still riding for the team, that they also had this dry period for the initial part of the year and really kicked into action towards the end. And I feel like 2021, we're not that far in the future yet, is also a year like that. They started off slow, and towards the end they did rack up points, or victories at least. Points, not really. But I feel their major part of the season is the Vuelta. As simple as that. We can talk about Tour de l'Ain, Vuelta Burgos, Paris stage of Case Bowl, who are, I guess that Paris stage is a decent victory for sure, but Vuelta 3 stage wins is where it's at. And Michael Storer is a big part of that. Did he also win the mountain classification? I think he did, right?
He did, yes.
Then Romain Bardet winning a stage there as well. Yes, it's because he fell out of GC, basically. But I guess 3 stage wins in a Vuelta is certainly something that a lot of people or teams will be looking for. And that's the part of the season that did work out for them. Now, where do you think that the problem areas are? Do you think that it's the consistency of sprinters and so forth?
Sprinting, GC, classics. That's pretty much it, because stage hunting is you can get hot like they did in the Tour last year or the Vuelta this year. There can be some suitable stages. The GC situation might play out so that there's more break opportunities. But Case Bowl, clearly another very inconsistent and not great year, won that Paris stage, and they can talk all they want about the lead out. I think in one of the interviews, Speckenbrink, or the DS Curvers, was like the lead out was also a problem. I don't know about that. I saw many times Niels Eckhoff bringing Case Bowl into a reasonable position, and Bowl literally couldn't open up his sprint. So I don't know. Bowl a problem. Dainese was encouraging at the Vuelta. Yeah. I think that was good to see at the Vuelta. But again, I don't want to harp on it too much, but this points classification, Benji, they do have a decent buffer on Lotto Cofidis, but if they repeat this year and the other two get their act together, and Arkea as well, DSM could be in the relegation from World Tour battle as well. And that's just because, as Benji said, not many sprinters, and stages in Grand Tours don't give you that many points. But they're a far cry from 2017 with Dumo, before that with Kittel, or 2014. And I think we should talk about the issues, Benji, being, all these riders leaving. And I guess I've never really asked your view on it, what you think is wrong.
So my take on it is, we've seen across years that many riders have left. I'll name a few. Kittel at a certain point. We had Barguil leaving at a certain point. We had there was some trouble with Dumoulin as well. We had trouble with Ilan van Wilder this year. We had trouble with Benoit this year. Hirschi last year. There's probably some other names that Matthews. There's probably some other names that I forgot to mention. But it feels like DSM has this mold that they want the rider to fit in. And if a rider does not fit in that mold when it comes to the way he wants to behave with that team, or the way he trains in a perfect way, and the way he's fine with every decision being made by the staff and not having much input into that, if that mold is not okay for the rider is going to bring that up and is going to complain about it. And it seems like they don't take that feedback in based on the reporting I've seen. And I think that's a major issue.
Like we heard about saddle heights, riders not being able to adjust it, needing to go through 26 emails to adjust their saddle height, even though obviously the human body changes throughout the course of the year, even if measurements are done at the start of the year. It seems like they're trying to do the marginal gain stuff and they're trying to be scientific and analytical, which I understand, but there seems to be, it's just not done in a very smart way. I love that they tell their riders their schedule early on in the year, which for the entire year. I love that they have experts setting them up on the bike, etc. That being said, it's not an exact science, a rider's bike position. And as I said, it might change and the rider will know best. Hey, I feel uncomfortable here. I need to change this. And it's no use having to a 3-month delay to do that, if that was the case. With the Van Wilder thing, Benji, now listen, I don't have a problem. I think it's quite good that if a team sees a rider as unhappy, they let a rider go. We saw that with Dylan Groenewegen and Jumbo-Visma. Not unhappy, but interests aren't aligned,
Yeah.
ambitions aren't aligned. We commended Jumbo-Visma for what they did there. Van Wilder thing's a little bit different, or all the other ones are different. First of all, the DSM make it very, very obvious that there's bad blood, literally in the press releases announcing it. Secondly, well, with Van Wilder, they weren't keen to let him go, mainly because I felt like he was also in the wrong on certain counts.
Yeah.
He was putting things on social media he shouldn't have. But then they left him out of the Vuelta with very, very short notice. And if you're going to do that to riders, you have to understand people are not going to be happy when you do that. So if it was one rider, like with Jumbo, you say there's not a systemic problem here with the number of riders, particularly their best riders, going, which, speaking of which, 5 of their 6 top riders by points last year have left. Hirschi, Kelderman, Hindley, Matthews, Tej Benoit. Like, that's a you problem. Even if you think the riders are wrong, well, okay, the riders you think are wrong, you let them leave. Where does that leave you? Worst in World Tour by points. So do you think from what you've read there'll be any changes next year or more of the same?
From the reactions that I've seen in the media and so forth from, I think, Kemna and Spekenbrink, it seems like they're so, brought in by their own mindset and so forth that it doesn't seem like they're willing to change their ways for riders that bring it up. But I obviously hope that they adapt slightly because this is not a way to continue. It's basically a development team with a development team at this point.
Exactly, yeah. And so, as Benji was referring to, some of the quotes in the media, it reads like shit out of a 1984, the novel 1984, like just being like buzzwords about the writer must submit to
cooperation.
Cooperation, yeah, cooperation.
What was it with Whiten's antibiotics or something?
Oh, yeah. And then Dumo, didn't he have like a knee surgery and then they asked him to drive like 12 hours north? That was reported as well. So he wasn't particularly happy about that. And then he turned around midway through. Anyway, things aren't all roses at DSM, I don't think, even though Bardet and Chris Hamilton say they're happy there. Here are the transfers outwards. Roche retires. We saw that coming when we saw him on the GCN couch halfway through the year. Martin Salmon, I think, left the team. Felix Gall, I think he left his contract early as well. Benji, the Austrian, to Asia Citroën, but no huge loss. Chad Hager's gone to Rally. Yasha Sutherland's gone to Bahrain. Again, no huge loss. Now the bigger ones. Max Canter. Now you're saying Max Canter, that's a big one. He's gone to Movistar. Well, Max Canter's a Conti sprinter that can score points. So he has a value in this market. Van Wilder to De Koenig, we knew about that already. Storer to FDJ, Hindley to Bora, Hirschi already, still counts to UAE, Benoit to Jumbo-Visma, the most recent one. That's a lot of good riders out the door, Benji.
Yeah. Personal question for you. If you see that Hindley and Storer, after 2021, are both out of contract, you've got the same amount of money to sign them both, either one of them. Who do you sign?
Well, no, I can't answer that because Hindley will
You're
cost a
Australian.
lot. Well, no, but Hindley costs a lot more than Storer.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I would sign Storer for the lower price every time, obviously.
But if he was the same, I'd consider still signing Sora after this year.
Neither.
No? Okay.
Like for the big price, for like whatever it is, high six
Or the small
figures.
price.
Oh, still, yeah, Storer. Storer, you mean on ability? Yeah, I think Storer is what he did at the Welter was particularly impressive, and I would probably keep him in that role rather than taking him to. I think that he's going to do GCS in 1 week or 4 day races. Anyway, that's a lot of points out the door. What about Tej Benoit, Benji? Do you expect him to be better at Yumbo, or we won't really know because he'll be a domestique a lot of the time?
I think he'll fit perfectly in the role that Jumbo requires him to fit in, which is a domestique role for Wout van Aert in the classics, and being able to be a versatile domestique in other areas like hill classics and mountain races and so forth. So he's good there. I feel like he's not having to get much opportunities there, but we're going to keep that for the Jumbo pod. But it's hard to say whether he's going to be better at Jumbo or something, but I think he's certainly fitting in their program. But I do believe that this team DSM is going to miss him.
You surprised they let Cantor go? Like, I know he's not a world beater, but he's 24. He's German. I know it's a Dutch, mostly Dutch team, but he's been through the development team, and I don't know. I think it's one of Movistar's best pickups, but he can
Perhaps he
cert.
wanted a different saddle height.
Maybe it's hard to say. Anyway, a lot of riders out the door. Incoming. This is what's particularly interesting to me. You know, when they signed Marco Brenner very young, Leknesund, Nicholas Merkel coming up from development team, all these young riders. Aronsman back in the day. Now they're having Degenkolb come back. Now I assume it's on a lower salary than he was on at Lotto Soudal. I'd hope so. Although we've seen Bardet is apparently Bardet is on close to €2 million. What do you think? And they're talking. I've seen announcing, he can be a leader in the clubhouse, a leader for the team. But Degenkolb certainly is not what he was, Benji. Even like Tour de France stage winning level after his accident, but he's certainly not what he was when he was at Argos Shimano or whatever pre his accident.
Yeah, certainly not. I feel like he's already having difficulties just getting a victory in a year, which is proven by the fact that he doesn't have any in 2021. I feel like he does still have the cobble ability, because if we remember, like at the end of last season in 2020, he got 9th in RVV, for example, 6th in Gent-Wevelgem. Those are good results. It's only less than a year, well, a bit more than a year difference between that time and now. So if he can find that again, then he can definitely be worthy for this squad in couple races, be a co-leader or a helper when it comes down to it. But I feel like he's valuable for this team. Certainly, he can get top 10 positions in sprints. I'm not sure that's very valuable because they have Case Ball for that already.
Well, Eschborn Frankfurt second, like that. You say, oh, whatever, 250 points.
You're right.
I think it's a good signing, depending on the money. They
Yeah.
need a rider like him. They don't have, and he's only 32. He's not 36 or 37. And even if he doesn't get back to that 20 sort of the Giant Alpecin 2016
Yeah.
level, it's still, I think, quite a good signing. They need leaders. The next ones I'll run through. Jonas Iversby Widerberg from UNOX, Henry van Dennebeel from the development team, Leon Heinschke from the dev team, Rodenberg from UNOX, Meyerhofer from the dev team, Sam Welsford, who I know from Australia, who was on the Australian track pursuit team, is sprinter. He's come in as well, and Tim Naberman from the dev team. Which ones stand out from you there, Benji?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about Henry van den Abele, who is, in my opinion, one of the better signings here as well. He got, I think, third in the Giro U23, very decent climber. I recall him winning that race last year. Second last year in the Giro U23.
Oh, and Pidcock.
So, yeah, indeed, Pidcock won that. You're right. So, quite certainly a decent climber. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing that. And he does that ahead of the likes of Tobias Holland Johannesson, who we spoke about in the the Neo Pro podcast we did. Riders like Alessandro Vere, that's a climber from Kolpak who's going to Arkea this year. Piganzoli, a climber once again in Cometa. So like these are good results for Ivan Nabil, and I feel like he's a worthy rider to get onto World Tour. The problem is that he will take time to develop as a climber and to become a GC rider or a climbing rider in races. And that's where I see the problem with his transfer. He's got a contract until 2023. By the time he's getting to the point where he's got results or can achieve results, he might be going to another team by then.
Exactly. That's the problem with these contracts, particularly with the GC guys. Who you don't expect him to be coming out and consistently top 10ing World Tour stage races, or at least I don't expect that. Otherwise, Mayer-Hofer, I remember from 2018 Junior Worlds. I think he was in the break in Remco, came past and dropped him. Rodenberg had good results in 2019, and I believe might have been in the track Olympics focus, but he won Eschborn Frankfurt U23. Looks quite fast. Welsford's very fast. He's been, I know people don't know, but the Bay Crits had like some World Tour riders. If you've seen one of my older videos, he did really well there with Kel O'Brien as his leader. I was actually surprised he didn't go to Bike Exchange with the pairing of Kel O'Brien, but you won't see many of his results in 2021 or 2020, mainly because Australians haven't been able to race any races in Asia or Australia, and he's been in the track program. But he's very fast, and they should be able to try and pick up some points with him. The other guys, again, are sort of development, as from the name suggests, young guys on the development program, like Leon Heinschke, German, GC prospect, third GC at Tour Alsace, and he, I think, came second on a mountaintop finish ahead of Santiago Umba, who's a hugely touted prospect with a Quadro Colombian 18-year-old Ron Androni, dropped him. So, yeah, there's no one there, Benji, that's on like even Itzolo level, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. Like the Wiedeberg, I like him as well, partially because I know the guy, but also because he, I think, was in the breakaway in Kuurne, a decent rider to get over cobbles, and he was pretty prominent in breakaways and so forth in action in X. He's also the guy, I think, that was it the Norwegian Championships against Biström, where there was a 1v1 sprint or something,
Oh, yeah.
and
They stole it from him.
the judge, they didn't have a photo finish or something and decided on the spot who the winner was, which was Biström, which I completely disagree with, but hey, that's how it was decided. I think he's also U23 European champion last year or the year
Yes,
before. So
2020. He's very good.
yeah,
He's very, very good. Worth signing 100%. I'm surprised UNOX couldn't keep him, because for all like Paris Tour Aspire, he just won. He looks very, very good, and 22 worth signing. But that being said, Benji, out of those transfers, how many World Tour wins do you see in there? Like what, Degenkolb 1 would be good?
0.
Yeah, I think the likelihood is 0 unless they can get like a couple of easier races, or Catalonia with Degenkolb, I think in a sprint might fit as well. But yeah, that's the transfers for DSM. Don't know what are they? Do you know, are they a big budget team, or are they kind of mid pack?
My guess is mid-pack, but I actually don't
Yeah.
know.
All right, time to pick the cobbled team for Team DSM in 2022. It's a lot more clear now who the leader should be, although this is, the team is equality. There are no leaders. We are all leaders and have an opinion at DSM, which I'm sure they told Hirschi after he nearly ran the Ardennes in 2020. But Degenkolb has to go to as many cobbled one-day races as possible, particularly like Omloop and Kerner. Who else would you send with him? Søren Kragh has to go to like the RVV type things. Eckhoff at Omloop. Nikias Arndt for some of them. But otherwise...
Nieuwenhuis, Wiedeberg, I would put in there. Casper
yes.
Pedersen, those three. What's Dasveld good at? Isn't he a decent climber? I think he doesn't fit in these races.
No.
Yeah, he doesn't fit there. I think those are really the names, to be honest. Nico Dens, perhaps. I recall him doing cobble kind of races, but I don't really see it recently, so I'm not sure how decent he's at it these days. But the names we named are the ones I'd be putting in those races. But in all honesty, like if we look at that team, what do you think they can achieve with that?
I think they can get a fair few top fives in like Brugge de Panne, Gent Wevelgem, Omloop Kerner. If they get Degenkolb on into good condition, and then RVV, they need Søren. Am I overrating him at RVV, or has he done okay there before?
I
I am
think he
over.
can do okay there, but
I'm
he hasn't
overrating him.
had optimal racing there. I think he fits more in a Paris-Roubaix style race, but he also hasn't had the best Paris-Roubaix in 2021. Also, that was a pretty special edition.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it falls on Degenkolb, frankly. To be honest, yeah, like that's probably why it's a better signing because they don't really have much else for cobbles. Ardennes, again, it's not looking great because I guess for the likes of Brabant's Benji, you'd go with maybe Søren but more Leknusund, Timon Arensman, but these again are not top shelf guys. They're good young prospects. I like them, but if Arensman and Leknusund are your leaders for the Ardennes, you're not in great shape. Mark Donovan, he looked good in Vuelta breaks last year, but little of note this year. But
I'd
he's
send Bardet.
he can't do all of them though, can he? Like, would you? Or, I mean, Flesh Liège, yes, but what about like Brabants and Amstel? Still
Nah,
Bardet?
not Brabants and Amstel, but I put him in LBL for certain. He can top 10 that on a decent day. And I think he's done decent
He's
at
podiumed it before.
Flesh. Has he? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
example. But I think I would put him in there. It's hard to fill up an entire team though in this squad. Certainly with the likes of Atish Binod last year, it was easier, I would dare to say. Wasn't for Marco the guy that 5 years ago won LBL U23? 2019.
2 years ago. I don't know how you remember that. But anyways, he's only 21. So
Yeah.
again, as Benji said at the top of the show, it's a dev team with a dev team half the guys because we're struggling to pick out their Liège team because I'm not even seeing like a reliable domestique, like an experienced Ardennes domestique. It's Arensman, Leknusund, and as Benny said, Bardet clearly has to be Flesh Liège, Amstel leader, and then Brabants maybe give some other people some options.
Hamilton, perhaps he got top 70 at LBL, so he can
True,
survive some climbs.
true. Jesus. Maybe Van Dannebiel, honestly, Benji. He's quite talented.
Yeah.
Why not send him to those? All right, Giro d'Italia. I have no idea. It's got to be Bardet GC, right?
I would say so because I feel like it's the best of the three ground stores to send them to for certain. Less time trials. Yeah, I'd put Bardet in the Giro. Now I'd put Dainese in there for the sprints. I feel like the Dainese's year could be the one where he starts winning World Tour races. Last year he was close to them quite a lot, and I feel like he's on the brink of a World Tour victory this year. I feel like he will win a World Tour victory this year. I don't think that's a hot take actually, so I'll keep it in this part of the podcast here.
I agree with that in that I would split the team. The problem with Bardet's Giro Benji is now the Ardennes. He didn't do the Ardennes this year, and then he was
Yeah.
quite good at the Giro. Is that how do you combine those two? I think he has to do both, and then can have a big break until he does the Vuelta. Although, if the point situation is bad at the end of the year, he might have to be going to Trevado Vaticino type races, not the Vuelta, although they're afterwards. I'd send Van Dannebiel. I love to send the Neo Pros to the Giro. I mean, hey, Schmidt was a Neo Pro, won a Giro stage, like in his first stage race, just about. Why not? Leknusund, Chris Hamilton, you'd have to pair with him. Dainese, you're going to have to give him some sort of lead out. Nikias Arndt loves a Giro sort of style big break transition stage win. He won one in 2016, I think, ahead of Trenton. It might not even been a break. So I would send Arndt as well, just to be a rouleur and can pick up something, and to help Dainese and maybe Donovan. Send Donovan if you can get in. But yeah, I think Bardet, Benji, I think he can podium the Giro.
Okay. I feel like these days that's a hot take. You could have
Is
kept
it?
that for the end. I
I don't
feel
know.
like it is.
They'll also be looking at, I think, Florian Stork, who looked good at UAE to a seventh on Jebel Hafid. They really need, but then
But
showed
the rest
nothing
of
for
the
the rest of the
season.
year. Yeah.
So I agree that he had that one good race, but he needs consistency
Yeah.
and needs to prove something more to be able to specify which race he needs to be sent to be honest. What's clear is that for every single race, we have half a team for DSM.
Yeah.
And we have to fill it up with other people. And yeah, you're going to have a bit of a lead out for Dainese going. Yeah, you're going to have a bit of support for Bardet going if you send him to the Giro. I'm currently just wondering where they'll send their youngsters. Basically everywhere, I'm guessing, because they've got spots everywhere left. But like a Marco Brenner, I have no clue where to send this guy.
He did the Dauphiné. I remember he attacked, but with another DSM rider. But he's so young. He's 19. He turned 19 this year in his Neo Pro year. Like he's 18 at the start of it. It's again the contract until 2024. I reckon Benji. I reckon in 2023, 2024, we're going to see a reversal of the signing the young guys because they realize, holy shit, all you do is develop them for 3-4 years, and then they take the Stora deal and they leave. Well, he wasn't signed that young. But yeah, Brenner, he's clear, he's not at a level yet where he can be a consistent contributor as a domestique and world tour stage racing. So that's a problem. Tour de France, I'm going with Søren Degenkolb, Eckhoff, Case Bowl, hoping that he's, picked it up a bit. Casper Pedersen.
Who's going to
That's
go for the stage wins? Simon
Degenkolb.
Hartensman for GC? Time trial?
Harrison is really good. I think he's really, really good. I just 11th at Romandy. There's not that much GC wise. Vuelta, he was good, a really, really good final TT.
Third. Holy fuck.
Yeah, I think he's 22. He's another one, Benji. He's 22. This is the end of his contract with DSM. If I was another team, I'd be licking my lips to pick up Timon Aronsman and be bidding on him. But
needs to go, and like he's the kind of rider where I'm like, I feel like he's more the GC type due to his time trial, where he needs to try and go for a top 10 in GC in a Grand Tour. While with other riders, I'd say go for a stage win. I don't feel that with Aronsman for some reason.
Timon Aronsman's Dumo 2.0, 190 centimeters, 22. Got some climbing, maybe improve his climbing. I mean, that's obviously that's his ceiling, but the TT is very good. But again, he's only 22. So that's, if you're Jumbo Visma, you're like, okay, let's try and bring this guy through. And DSM, I guess, thought that. So anyway, we're getting off topic. We are high on Timon Aronsman. Tour de France, yeah, as I said, Degenkolb, Boll, Eckhoff, and Søren Kragh to go for stages, and maybe Nico Denz. As well. It's not great.
That's an understatement based on like the amount of doubt we have to complete a full team. But I think those are the names that we're looking for quite rightly. I think we mentioned Leknesund quite a lot. I'm wondering which Grand Tour we should send them to for first. And with his time trial, I would dare to say send him. He hasn't done one yet. Vuelta probably then.
Vuelta. Yeah, probably the Vuelta. But yeah, I think Casper Pedersen, third on a transition stage this year. I think they can still win Tour de France stages if they get into that stage 19 sort of breakaway with SKA and Casper Pedersen. So it's not all doom and gloom.
The last cobble stage.
Exactly.
Right?
So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom, but again, they have no GC prospect for the Tour. Their only GC rider of any real note at this point is Bardet. That's not to say that maybe another guy takes a step up. Because Aronsman has good numbers in training at least. Vuelta, no idea. I think Bardet, Benji, and to go for GC or those stages, Donovan, Hamilton, maybe. I would not send Dainese. I think you should send Dainese to some smaller one-day races to pick up some points.
I don't know. I'm on the edge. It depends on where they are in GC in the team ranking at that point, I would dare to say, because I somewhat have the feeling that they're still going to be okay in that. And can't you just send Degenkolb for top 10s in 1.1 classics at the end of the season after the Tour de France? So
probably. I don't know. that's the end of our sort of picking their teams for various races. Bardet GC at the Giro, I think, is the best result they can go for and the most realistic, like top tier result they can get
Yeah.
this year. I think Bardet GC Giro is a big target, and then Degenkolb in the first week of the Tour de France. So listen, broadly speaking, this is not a deep team. You know, as you could tell by how difficult it was to fill out 8 spots in each race. That being said, they do have non-delusional options for classics, GC at the Giro, and at least a stage or two at the Tour, which some teams cannot say. Time for hot takes, Benji. They had.
Jesus Christ.
You're not high. I'm sensing you're not high on DSM, just generally.
I have a hard time figuring out realistic hot takes because we have to say hot takes and they need to be somewhat realistic so that it's in the area of possibility. And I've got a hard time figuring that out right now with this team.
But if you just shit on them, people are like, that's not a hot take as well. This year they had 5 World Tour wins. The over-under I am setting again at 4.5 World Tour wins. I was very quick. Benji's on the just triggered. He's pulled the trigger there.
Yeah, under. Like, who's going to take those stage wins? Bardet is going for GC most likely in the Giro. So unless he fails in the first week, he's not going to be quick enough to respond with a stage win in the third week. So perhaps one stage win can be Bardet
maybe
in that Grand Tour. Perhaps he picks one up in the Vuelta even. So 2. Dainese a 3. But next to that, I have a hard time figuring out anybody that can take a World Tour stage in this team.
I guess there's when you have Aronsman and you have Leknesson, you know, if we were doing this time last year, we wouldn't have said Michael Storer 2 World Tour wins and 2 Grand Tour wins. So
yeah,
maybe it's Aronsman and Leknesson who picked those up and they really kick on.
Let's hope so.
I hope so, for their sake. That being said, if Aronsman does well, someone's going to offer him a good contract. Like that's the problem when he's in his last year of his deal, according to PCS at least, and at least Leknesson's got another year or so after this. But I don't know. I'm on the edge, Benji. I'm going over.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going over because like SKA can't have a worse year. His year was terrible. So if Krah Anderson just wins one, Aronsman or Leknesson or Donovan pick up some sort of break somewhere, Nicky Assant does what Nicky Assant does, then Bardet. I'm going the over, but not by much, and that's good for us to disagree. Now time for hot take. Or do you think they get relegated, Benji?
I don't think so.
It'd be very fucking hard for them to do. But yeah, I don't.
Well, if every rider leaves by the end of the season, they might.
I don't think they will. I don't think they will get relegated. But I don't think they're going to have their 2020 highs again either.
No.
All right, hot takes time. I got some hot takes for DSM. I think Henry van Dennebiel comes top 10 in a World Tour stage race.
Okay. My only relatively, I feel like it is at this point. It needs to be somewhat realistic, you know. So we can't go too much.
No, it does not.
Because I feel like your Bardet for top 3 in the Giro was already quite much hotter, actually.
Bardet Giro podium's a lock. Like just lock it in.
I think Casebolt will not win a single race this year.
I was about to say that one too. I think Casebolt will win a race. Yeah, that's a good one. I think Leknesson. Aronsman. That's not a hot take. Who else? I'm just looking through this. This team, Jesus.
What's a hotter take? Casebolt will not win, or Casebolt will win more than one World Tour stage?
I don't think
he's always on one.
I don't think Casebolt's winning a race.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, it's just tough. It's tough here. I just don't want to. I think Sam Welsford wins 3 pro races. Like they're gonna, that's hot. I think he's gonna win 3 pro.
That's pretty fucking hot.
Not dot pro. I mean professional. So 1-1s count or 2-1s count. Let's not make it too hot. Yeah, I think he wins some of them. He's gonna. assume sprint leadership over Case Bowl, go the Tour de France as sprint leader next year. Look forward to it. But yeah, that was our DSM preview. Let us know, do you think there's structural problems with DSM that will not be fixed? What do you think is the point of this team at the moment with so many developing riders? Is the UCI ranking system kind of unfairly treating them, or is it right that you shouldn't be really rewarded for having half your team as a dev team? What do you think will come out of Aronsman and Leknesund, very highly touted prospects in Van Den Biel? You do have to say, Benji, they generally do get young riders developing in terms of, and performing well at some point. Like, it's not like our dealer at UAE. So, like, do you think if you were an agent for Henry Van Den Biel, I'm not sure DSM's a bad spot to go.
I don't think so either, because it has a perfect contract length where at the end of your contract, you're going to be good enough to go to another team that will pay you more, most likely. And like for Van Den Biel, the 2-year contract is perfect, because I'm guessing that by the end of that period, he's going to be perfect. Like all these riders that do great, they do so in a year where they end up leaving. So that seems to be the trend for me. And it seems like the people who have less ambition, like a Chad Haga, for example, had, he was happy with his time at DSM, ended up leaving to Rally now, but he was happy there. So it seems like back to the battle we spoke about at the start here, the concept that some riders are leaving. I would dare to put it on the fact that riders with ambition have more trouble.
Yeah, I think. And listen, if you were to Koenig, say Henry Van Den Biel has a terrible 2 years, sorry. He's 23, end of 2023. If you're Quickstep, you pick him up, right? Every day of the week, you pick him up on a minimum deal. So it's
Lotto Sudal?
Yeah, well, maybe. But he was on their
Position 5 to
U20.
10 in GC.
He's on their club team or U23 team. But
Yeah.
that's why I think I agree with Benji. DSM, you get good I do think you get good development for young riders, and then they get to Tej Benut's age and they're like, I can't fucking deal with this anymore. It seems to be the recurring theme. But from 20 to 23, you get World Tour experience because they got to send riders to these races. World Tour teams can see you, and then your contract's up when you're young enough that people still want to take a shot on you, particularly when you are Belgian like Van Den Biel. So yes, I kind of like them in that aspect. I do think some self-reflection is needed, but I hope they have a better year anyway, particularly Degenkolb. I was sad to see him if you're not winning at Eschborn. But that's our DSM preview for 2022. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to give us a review or rating on podcast players, and we'll see you with maybe one of the big teams in the next one. Ciao.